The Honest Money podcast is brought to you by Prescient Investment Management. We consider everything to give you the advantage. It's the future of investing. Prescient Investment Management is an authorized FSP.
Welcome to Honest Money. I'm Warren Ingram.
This is Pieter Villiers.
And this is the second episode in our series about focusing on people in their mid-career and the things that they should be doing, the mistakes they should be avoiding. And it is, I said it in the first episode of the series, this is the juggling stage of life. And so today we're talking about the sandwich generation. And just to explain, so that means how do you fund your children's education, whether it's going to be at school or later in university? How do you look after your parents if they need help, or your siblings or your aunts and uncles and the broader family? So it's about you having to look after those who are younger and those who are older, and then look after yourself and do all of that while living, having fun, and kind of just going through life. So welcome to the juggle.
Yeah, it's it's an interesting time in life where many things at once happens, and you need to somehow figure out where to go and what to do. So yeah, quite excited about this episode. So just a reminder, this is now our second series that we're doing on mid-career professionals. We've got our first series on young professionals between 20 and 35. I'm going to leave a link to the playlist for that. And today is the second episode. So the prior to this, we just discussed common mistakes that people tend to make in this age group. And today we're going to go a bit deeper in that sandwich generation of trying to balance all 12 balls in the air and hoping none will drop. So we always use this analogy that I like, where you're on the airplane and they give the brief in the beginning that if there's a problem and the oxygen mask drops, you have to put it on yourself before you put it on the person next to you, whether that is your kid or your parents. So in today's episode, you're in the middle, got your opa on this side and your child on this side, and there's a problem, oxygen mask drop. What do we do? What do we prioritize? Or who do we prioritize? So I'd probably start off and say, you need to take care of yourself one day, right? So in order to one day stop working, you need to have enough assets built up that will provide you with an income. That's essentially what retirement means, or financial freedom is. I don't have to work any longer because I've got enough assets that will generate an income. Now, that's not going to happen magically. There's no button that you press at 65 and now all this money drops from the heavens and now you sort it. You have to be proactively building towards retirement. And people underestimate how much they actually need to save for. I mean, it's actually quite simple. Let's take 65 as traditional retirement age. Chances are you're going to live for at least 25, 30 years, maybe more. With medicine improving and AI taking over, most people might actually live past 100. So if we just do the maths on that, that's 35 years that you need assets to provide an income for. Now, if you start working at the age of 30, you only have 35 years to provide for that 35 years in retirement. So you can't logically expect to have enough money to live off of if you only start saving at 50, for example. If you're only saving for 15 years instead of, and you want an income for 35, it's not gonna work. So a lot of trade-offs will then happen. You either have to spend less in retirement, lower your expectations, work for longer until you're 70, 75. So just to start off with this analogy with the oxygen mask, understand that you will be your biggest first priorities, making sure that you're putting enough money away for yourself one day, because if you don't, you're going to become reliant on the kids, on your child next to you, or other family members, or the government, which we know it's
good luck with that.
Resources already. So I'll start off with that is your first priority, your own retirement, your own future.
So I mean, I think one of the things that happens when you're in this stage of life is that you've got people that that are most dear to you. I hope most dear to you. Being your children and your parents, and you've got limited resources. That's why you're listening to the show. It's Honest Money, and you don't have infinite resources, which means you can't take care of yourself fully, your children fully, and your parents fully. If they're not fully funded, if your parents are not able to look after themselves, and the burden falls to you, there is no way you can look after everybody and perfectly. So I think one kind of step to take in this thing is that sounds like an obvious thing to say, but actually just stop and say, I don't have infinite resources. This is not possible. So what am I going to do to make the correct trade-off decisions? And I think there are a couple of hard calls that you have to make. And sometimes we don't stop and think. So you talk to parents with children, they're going to say, if there is any way that I can afford it, I'm going to send my kids to private school. There's no more thought. Just that's what I'm going to do. That's what's going to happen. And I've got quite a bit to do with education institutions in South Africa, and I can tell you there's some phenomenal government schools out there, and they cost. Some of the more expensive government schools are expensive, but the reality is they might cost 1/5, 20% of what an expensive private school costs. And you just think to yourself that's a real trade-off to make. Do you just, without thinking, simply throw your child into private school because that's what everyone else tells you to do? That's what society does. Or what about a very good a government school? And I mean, I just want parents to stop and think about this a little bit more, because what happens here is, let's say you make that call. 2 children, 200,000 Rand a year. It's 400,000 Rand a year of after-tax money that you're putting into your children's education. What happens when one or both of your kids rock up at the house, they're 14 and 17 years old, and they get 48% for the year? What kind of pressure are you going to exert on them? Because surely you're going to be really unhappy. What kind of pressure do you feel yourself? How disappointed, et cetera, et cetera. So, and I'm not saying that your kids are going to be failure, but just think about the level of pressure that you've ratcheted up on yourself, your family, and your kids. And I think understanding that your job as a parent is, yes, your job is to educate them, but it's also to provide an environment at home which is good for them. And a family living under enormous financial pressure, where you're just scraping to get by all the time, and you might be hiding that from your children. They might not know that you're in deep financial shtuchas just because of them. But the reality is they'll feel it. Your relationship will be under strain. Your work will be under strain because now you're under pressure. So what you've done is you've taken a decision, or maybe you didn't even think about the decision. You've chucked on all this financial pressure, and then you expect everything to work out well. Now let's just understand, financial issues and children are two of the biggest causes of divorce. So just real, like, this is real parenting and real adulting here. Is that the most important thing you want to do? Is to put all of that pressure on yourself and your spouse, and then you're trading off potentially also helping your own parents, who don't forget that you're in the sandwich generation. So I would just want to say to parents in this situation, just be intentional. Just be very clear as to why you're going to private school. Are all government schools rubbish? No. So can you get your child into a good government school? Will they be worse off? I don't think so. My experience is, having employed lots of kids from both, I don't see a difference in one versus the other. I think kids from government schools have a general, maybe more rounded exposure because they deal with their pupils. Their fellow pupils come from all backgrounds.
Yeah.
And so they may be a little bit better equipped to deal with South Africa as it is, as opposed to, that they are I mean, it's quite tough on a child when you come into a private school and you're the poorest kid, or everyone else around you is living large and going away and driving fancy cars, and you're embarrassed to bring your friends home. Like, again, as a parent, just be very clear as to what you want to do, because just thinking that a great school will give your child a great upbringing is not true. You give your child a great upbringing. That all that happens at school is that they get additional education. But you provide your child a lousy environment at home, huge financial pressure, lots of fighting and stress, and no time. You're never there because you're working all the time. You're not providing a great upbringing, and then you expect the school to solve all the problems. Unfortunately, might be harsh. You might not like to hear this, but you're failing at part of the job here, which is just be present for the child. That's what they really need. You can read to them and help them with education. You don't have to fill all the gaps with money.
Yeah. Those are some very powerful stuff there. I couldn't agree more. So it is tough. I think most from a parent's perspective, and I'm not yet a parent, so I'm giving my unsolicited advice here. But I'm talking from a perspective of what I've seen other people tell me, and also at least from my perspective when I was brought up. As a parent, you might think you're doing, the best thing that you can do for your child is to send them to private school and to give them all the opportunities in the world. And that's true to some extent, but it shouldn't be to your own detriment. The stuff that you mentioned now, if you think the value of a parent is tied to what school your kid goes to, and you can't afford that school, then what's going to happen is you're going to have to work a lot more to be able to afford those school fees, which means you're not going to be present at home. Even if you are, you're going to be so stressed out that you're not really there to see your kids grow up. Then what's the point? Or you're going to go and take out debt, which is even worse, to fund that. And yes, I mean, the schools in South Africa are excellent, the public schools. I think it's world standard. And not only the educational system itself, and I'm not talking about the matric pass rate and what they think is necessary, but I'm talking more so holistically developing a child. There's the academic side, yes, it's learning about mathematics and languages and developing the brain. It's also the social side. There's the exposure to different types of people that are different to you. Being in an environment where you have to figure out how to communicate with other people and also how to get along with different personalities.
Yeah.
And sometimes if it's a very kind of exclusive bubble that someone is in, it's fine within that environment. But once you step outside of that bubble into the real world, it's a tough transition to make. And that's, from my perspective, I think most successful people come from a normal school, a public school. There's nothing wrong with sending someone to a public school. And in fact, I would send my own kids there, even if I could afford otherwise, because I just think the holistic development might be better for them long term. Because the success of a person is not just depending on how good their grades are.
Yeah.
Maybe that will help them to get opportunities in certain career paths. Yes, that's true. But being successful is more than that. And you can still create a very happy environment, which a very big part of a kid's upbringing is you as a parent being present and being there to see them grow up. And you can only do that if your finances allow it. So it's almost like a chain reaction. When you make one decision here, it's going to influence this step, this step, this step, this step. So it always comes back to, from our perspective as a parent couple, what can we afford? What are the options for our kids, and developing them as best as you can. And I agree, if probably the worst thing is if you spend so much money on the schooling system, and your expectations are so high of your kids and they don't meet those expectations, probably going to start resenting them. And that's the worst thing. Like that's a big aina. So you don't want money to become the thing that causes you to resent the outcome of what you expected it to be.
I mean, it's a heartbreaking thing, but one of the, when they when psychologists not really survey, but when they spend time with young children, one of the things that they'll ask is like, if you could do one thing, change one thing in your life, what would you like? And most of them will say more time with my parents.
Yeah.
And if you're a parent and you're thinking, well, I'm going to be working 18-hour days to get my kid to private school, all they really want is more of your time. So it's the one thing you can give them. It's the thing you can control within reason.
Yeah.
And just to think about it. So I guess that's what we're saying in Honest Money, our job is not to tell you how to live. Our job is to help you think about all the forks in the road and all the decisions you have to make, and potentially the consequence of the decision that you might not be thinking about. So that's enough lecturing about the kids. Let's step out of that one. So now we get into the next landmine, which is you're in the situation because your parents are also not financially okay. And maybe they did the same thing. They went out of their way to look after you and sacrificed. So now you've got parental guilt, right? Even if your parents are not trying to make you feel guilty, you know what they've done, and as a parent yourself, you know how hard it actually is and what they had to do. And so now you're in a situation where you don't want to kind of let your parents suffer, but you've got to look after yourself and you've got to look after your children. I think here the thing here is a little bit of open, honest, tough conversations with everybody. So you can't you don't necessarily want to be in a position where you just say no to your parents. not going to help you buy food. I mean, there might be people that are willing to do that. I think that would be a very hard thing to do. And so I'm not going to, help you find a place to live. I'm going to help pay for it. So maybe the thing to do is to sit down and say with your parents, to say, okay, what is your position? What can you generate? And this is my position. This is what I can generate, and I've got to educate my kids, etc., etc. And how are we dealing with this? Because it shouldn't fall to one set of adults in this thing. There maybe 4 adults in 2 sets of adults, and so you need to have a conversation collectively. Say, what can we do? And maybe just if you're you're the one listening, and it's, if you're married, first thing is you and your wife.
Yeah.
What are we prepared to do? So if we go way back, and there are many cultures around the world where they will live in multi-generation families on one maybe not one house, but on one area.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll never forget, driving through Switzerland and seeing, 3 or 4 story farmhouses. So the bottom story was the cows, and they store the cows over winter.
Part of the family.
Yeah, and they got to stay warm, and then the next level is like the youngest parents, and then the level above that might be the grandparents, and then the level above that is storage, and that's a kind of normalized ecosystem, and you can see it. If you drive around South Africa, you'll often see multi-generational families and property. That's got benefits for very young children because grandparents are on call. It's got benefits for the parents who might be working and then have someone to look after children from time to time. Obviously, huge downsides as well, because now mother-in-law is right there and she's judging or whatever the deal is. But the point is, you can make a call like that to say we can't afford 2 houses and look after everyone, but we can afford 1 house. We can afford 1 property. Maybe we build it. I mean, they literally call it a granny flat for a reason. Maybe we put a granny flat on the property. So you can do something like that. You can discuss that they don't live in a big expensive city, that maybe they live in a smaller town. I'm not saying you now excommunicate them out of the family circle and they live 1,000 kilometers away and you never see them again. That's not the deal. But maybe they live an hour's drive away. You see them on weekends and kids go to them on holidays. So there are decisions that you can make about together and seeing who can do what. And also sometimes being the sounding board for your parents to say, okay, so, you got retrenched at age 62, but you're sitting at home, you're 64 years old, you've got 35 years of life. Let's think about what you can do with the skill set that you've got, the time you've got, and maybe we can find you, so it won't be a side hustle, it'll be your only hustle. But maybe we can find a way for you to generate some income as well. I think there's ways that you can think about this differently and problem solve. But I think it starts with the hard conversation, a lot of transparency. And it's quite hard, I think, for us as children, adult children, to kind of, do this stuff with our parents, sit them down, because effectively you're in control now. You're parenting your parents and your children. But you've got to do it. Like, that's the deal here. Don't keep quiet and just, suffer in silence. That has terrible consequences.
Yeah, that dynamic is tough to navigate when you have to step up and essentially be the parent of your parents. I think that's tough. But I like your point when you said if someone is retired, doesn't mean they're not able to add any more value to society. It just mean that the way that they exchange value might change, the form. So if it is a case that they haven't provided enough for retirement, then there could be many reasons for that. It could be they have done their best. They dedicated their entire life to a company, and the company went down, and life just happened. That's not the end of the world. It means they can still pick up a skill or a hobby that they can turn into money. I mean, there's many. Sometimes when we go to the airport, there's this opa that has like not like a taxi service, but almost like a
Shuttle
private
service.
Uber, like a shuttle that will take people, because we always take the early flights, they're cheaper. Like, you fly at like 5 o'clock. But he's there, 4 o'clock. He's ready to take you to the airport, and that's how he earns his living now. And he's fine because he can do that in the morning, wake up early, and then take a nap at 11, and then life is good. So it doesn't mean that if you look at the numbers perspective, that what they have in their retirement pot is the only thing available to them. But as a child of your parents, help them understand what they can do. Maybe parent was a teacher. taught mathematics on high school level, cool. Private tutor. Why not? Get a
Online.
couple of online even.
Yeah.
Get a couple of pupils a week. Have a group session. Help them with their matric mathematics paper, or help them set up electronically to do online. Because I think a lot of times with people now kind of in their 60s, 70s, they didn't really grow up with technology. So a lot of this online stuff is daunting to them. They like, even a laptop is like, oh, but what if I press the, where's my computer? This is my computer. Where do I click? Like, what do you mean the recycle bin that I'm using? So it's those types of things that you really just have to sit next to them and say, no, it's fine. Like you click here
with patience.
Something simple like using a mouse. Like
Yeah.
it's done because the thing goes all over the place. Like, no, let's spend some time. You as a child don't necessarily have to give your money, but give your time and help them set up and explain, this is how you use your computer. This is, set up a online Facebook page that you advertise your services, whether it's a shuttle service or it is a tutor service, and take pictures, upload it. It's really not that difficult to learn. I think it's just taking that step of doing this might be daunting to some of them, and if you can help them just kind of create the infrastructure around that, maybe they actually do very well, and it stimulates them as well. I think also not sitting at home all day is not it's going to get boring very quickly. And if it means that, like you said, you kind of create the ecosystem at home where it's you, your kids, and your grannies in the granny flat, that's also a good thing, because your kids have the opportunity to get to know their grandparents. And I think the best thing for a grandparent is to be able to be close to their kids. I think, if people go overseas, it's tough for them because they don't really see them grow up. And it saves you time as a parent of your kids, so you can maybe work a bit more in the afternoon, so you don't have to pick them up from school. So it could be like a symbiotic ecosystem almost that you can create. So there are different ways that you can make this difficult sandwich work. It just means that depending on what your situation is and what cards you have in your hand, try and play them accordingly. But know that you need to prioritize yourself first, and then your kids, and probably then your parents. But it doesn't mean it's either one or the other. It could be all three. It's just at some point you're going to have to make some trade-offs. Maybe then you can't go overseas for now because you've got other responsibilities, which makes that adds more value to your life. Helping your parents is more valuable to you than having to go to Rome, for example. Then that's a trade-off that we make.
Yeah.
So, and that's, I think, what we're always trying to get at is there's no right way, there's no one right way, at least, let's say that. There are different combinations of things that you can do. At least if we can encourage some thought patterns as to what the options are, I think that's what we're trying to do here.
Yeah, and Brene Brown always says, to be clear is to be kind. And I think in a situation like this, being clear and setting boundaries, both for yourselves as parents, this is what's important to us about our children, how are we going to do things, and this is what we are happy to let slide. And the same with your parents, to say, this is how we can help you, but also if we're living all on one property, you don't just pitch up at our door every night that we're supper, or whatever the deal is, but you create rules and create boundaries so that everyone knows what the game is.
Yeah.
And your job here is you can't provide for everything, but you can create an environment which is helpful. And I think that's the thing. Like, I think we're too scared to have hard conversations because we're afraid of hurting someone's feelings. And when you've got a limited amount of time, money, and all of those things, the best thing you can do is be clear, because then everyone understands and they know how they can be useful and where they need to get out the way. And so, and then when conflicts arise, because that's what's going to happen, is you're making all these trade-offs. Every now and then things go out of balance. Life happens. Again, it's about just remove yourself a little bit, zoom out a bit, and then just say, what are our priorities now? Life changed. What do we do? How do we adjust? And then carry on. And I think that to me, we get stuck in a hole. We don't think that there's a way out, and we just keep going and going and going. And if we just taken a little bit of time, we might have realized we're going in the wrong direction, and we can be more productive. So I mean, I think again, it's about juggling. It's about giving yourself a little bit of grace to say, I can't do all of this. It's not possible. I can't help everyone in all situations. and then saying, well, that's okay. Because I can promise you there are thousands of people around you that are not getting through it as well. So you're not alone. You're not doing this badly, as you think. Probably everyone else is thinking that you're doing an amazing job and they're doing a terrible job. So don't do the comparison thing. But at the same time, be clear, be straightforward in your thinking. But it starts with just understanding what's important, and then go from.
And having this open, honest conversation. Sometimes that is tough, yes, at that specific moment. But what is even worse is like trying to do everything and failing and building resentment. Resentment to me is like drinking slow poison, because it's silent, you don't see it. It's building slowly over time, and then at some point it just breaks, and then it's like a massive all-out argument, and then all these kind of built-up emotions comes out, and you want to prevent that from happening. So being realistic of what we can do, and trying to do your best, and also kind of maybe to wrap up is just take some time to just define to yourself what does it mean to be a successful parent, because society will tell you many different things, and people will attach their value to certain almost like worldly
Possessions,
materialistic stuff, like the car I drive, the house I live in, the school my kids go to, these things that you can visibly see. But that's not really what life is about. Life is about enjoying living in the moment, seeing your kids grow up, and providing the best future that you can for them within what's realistic to you. And that success is different for everyone. So there's also no definition of success that's across the board for everyone. My definition of success would be different to Warren's definition, to your definition that's listening. So go take some time to define that for yourself, and then build an environment and an ecosystem around that, so that you can live a happy life. That's essentially what, within the balance of what's available.
That's all from me. Thank you so much for listening. We appreciate your comments. We appreciate your engagement. Please keep going. Please keep giving us the compliments, and if you have to, the criticisms, and then also topic suggestions, what you want us to talk about, and what you want us to focus more on.
Yes, so this concludes the second episode of this series. The third one, next one, we're going to talk about what your responsibilities as a parent are. So we're gonna put on our teacher hats and tell you in terms of the checklist that you need to tick as a parent, from a more like a protecting your family perspective, and also how you can go about approaching your financial situation, and what to prioritize there. So we're going to go a bit more theoretical there, but very important episode to go through. So if this is the first time you're tuning in, stay tuned for next week's episode. It's going to be a very important one, and we hope to see you there. Thank you so much for watching.
Bye-bye.
The Honest Money Podcast is brought to you by Prescient Investment Management. We consider everything to give you the advantage. It's the future of investing. Prescient Investment Management is an authorized FSP.